Welcome to the Law of Positivism podcast. I'm Shireen Oberg, and I'm a yoga teacher and author devoted to the path of healing and heart-based living. And I want to help you to step into what you truly are and to your highest potential. On this podcast, I share with you tools and insights to help you move ever forward on your spiritual and healing path. With guests from all over the world, from different wisdom traditions, I wish to create a web of loving energy that permeates the whole world to create more love and peace. You can connect with me on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube for more guidance and love. Hi to all you loving beings. Thank you for being here today, and I hope you had a beautiful week and are prepared for this new moon. I'm very excited. It's going to be my birthday on the Cancer new moon this week, so I'm preparing for a new cycle, a new solar year, and I hope that you are enjoying this beautiful time of Cancer season of resting and being within your realms of waters and emotions and nourishment and nurturing. It's a really beautiful time, and Mother Earth is really nourishing us right now. And this week's guest and episode topic is so interesting. We're talking all about angels and healing with Sandra Rea. She's an author, healer, and spiritual teacher. She helps empaths get crystal clear guidance from the angels each day, so they can stop doubting themselves and their decisions and start trusting they are guided and taken care of. She's the host of the Fiercely Spiritual podcast, which I was a guest on recently and that I've shared also on Instagram and Facebook as well, and the creator of Fiercely Spiritual Family Member Group. She lives in Ireland, where she spends her days doing the work that she loves, meditating and mountain biking. And in this episode, we talk about what it is and what it means and how we work with the Archangels. We work and talk about crystal healing, Akashic records, how important it is to ground in this work, and also the healing properties of angels. And I share my experience also with the angels. So I hope that this episode is beautiful and just right for where you are in your journey. I love working with the angels. They've been very present, and we talk about how we know also how to connect with them and how we can experience them. And I also want to give so much love to my show partners, Ace of Air, a newly launched beauty and wellness brand committed to products that put people and planet above all. And their line of clean, vegan, and cruelty-free skincare and supplements have been synergistically formulated at the intersection of herbalist wisdom and modern science, focusing on rituals that work from the inside out. Inspired by Mother Nature's ability to create abundance without waste, Ace of Air is the first and only beauty and wellness brand designed to be entirely circular and fully zero waste. And you can learn more about this beautiful, newly created brand by truly wise, intelligent, and enlightened creators, because they have thought about how to become more like Mother Earth, being circular and truly understanding the laws of nature and the cycles of nature. You can explore more on aceofair.com and also find them on Instagram on Ace of Air. So I hope you enjoy this week's episode with Sandra Rea. Hi Sandra, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here.
I'm so glad to have you here and to talk to you again. We just spoke recently on your beautiful podcast, and I would love for you to just share any type of daily meditation or mindfulness practice that you have in your life.
Okay, so we could be here for a while. I do a lot of things that help me to get started in the morning, but I'll explain briefly a little bit about my practice. So, when I wake up, the first thing I do before I even open my eyes, um, it doesn't necessarily happen every day, but I find that I'll just say to myself, I love me, I love me, I love me. And I'll just sit with that for a minute. And then as I open my eyes, usually one of my sons will come running into the room. So I'll chat with them for a few minutes and then they'll go off and play. And I'll sit up in bed and I'll just start to tune into how I want to feel for that day. So I'll ask myself questions like, what does peace feel like? What does ease feel like? And I'll just start tuning into those feelings. And I'll call in the angels and I'll ask them to surround me. And I work with the cardinal archangels. So these are the angels of the north, south, east, and west. So Archangel Michael, Archangel Gabriel, Archangel Raphael, and Archangel Uriel. And I'll ask them to stand to my right, my left, before me, and behind me. And then I have other angels I work with, and I'll ask them to stand above and below me and surrounding me. So I'll go through that phase of calling them in, allowing them to be on every aspect of my energy field. And yeah, I'll tune into what is coming up for me. And I'll just spend a few moments just tuning in. And it's quite an active process. It's not a meditation where I'm clearing my mind. It's quite actively tuning into emotions, tuning into the angels. And I find some mornings it'll be quite quick. And other mornings it'll go on for longer. And also depending on how much time I have on that given day, but usually at least around 20 minutes or so. And then we do the whole school thing. And after my boys have gone to school, I'll do a walking meditation. And then I come home. And after that, I'll do a seated meditation where it's more just allowing the mind to be calm. So that's how I usually begin my day. So it's a beautiful way to start. And I notice that if I don't go through that process, I just don't feel as centered and balanced during the day, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. What a powerful way to start the morning, and being very conscious of the energies within you and around you, and also asking for that support and help. I love that. And we're going to get into this today. I mean, you and I spoke very recently, and we got into the topic about angels and this energy and how it's connected in our lives. And for me, my first angel, like conscious angel connection was in Ireland, where you are. And I would love for you to start to maybe introduce yourself. And yeah, you're in Ireland. How have you come into what you're doing today?
Yeah, so I have always been in Ireland. My ancestors actually, my grandfather was Italian and he moved here when he was very young. So I have that connection as well. But I feel, and it's funny because I love Ireland, but I always said I have that Italian blood in me. I love the sun, I love warmth. And during the winter, even though we don't have harsh winters by any means, they can be very wet and a little bit cold. And I always think I wasn't made to spend winters here, but I do know that I most definitely was meant to be in this energy that we have here, because it is, I mean, it's called the Emerald Isle. And as we know, the heart chakra is, that beautiful emerald color and tones of pink as well. And often I'll be walking around and I often think to myself, when there's so much green around. That vibration and that energy is so prevalent here, and it has to, just do so much good for your heart chakra to be around that vibration, that color, and to be in it so much. I notice when I go to other countries that are a bit drier, and you don't, there's more of kind of tones of yellows or oranges, or more kind of tones of the lower chakras. I really miss the vibrancy of the green. And to me, green is like healing. It's all about life, about renewal. So yeah, there's very much that energy here, which probably most people don't even notice, particularly when they've spent their whole lives here. But I find, and for me, I wouldn't have noticed when I was younger, but I find now I'm very aware of that frequency, that vibration, and the energy from the trees. I'm very connected with the trees and the forests, and I just love being in that energy. And I know a lot of people are drawn to the water, and because we're an island, of course, we have so much water, and you've never too far to go to get to it. But for me, I'm always called to the forests and to the trees. And that's my place of renewal, where I find a really strong connection with nature.
That's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And I love the green and the heart chakra that is so strong there. And in your work, like, how did you get into what you're doing today? Maybe you can introduce that as well, what you're focusing on.
Yeah, so I work with the angels, but I started out, I remember when I was younger, always having an interest in kind of spirituality, not really knowing that was what it was. I remember learning and reading about Tai Chi when I was maybe 13 or 14, probably younger even, and also reading books that were about, spiritual things, and being drawn to it at a very young age. I also used to love writing songs. And for me, it was just an outlet of creativity. I didn't really think too much about it. And years later, I remember moving house and discovering this box where I had songs written down. And as I read them, I realized that I had actually been channeling messages. For me, they were just lyrics of songs that I was just writing. They were just flowing through me. And it was surprising to me when I read them, because I had no idea that that's what I was doing. So I was drawn to explore it further, and I didn't really know where to start or who to go to. But I remember hearing about Reiki and being really interested in that, and just having, a thirst for knowing more, and going to a Reiki healing. And I remember as I left the Reiki healing, a few things had come up during it that he'd said to me. One of the things he had said was that I wasn't really living my life. And I felt a little bit insulted, because to me, I was in probably my early 20s. I was working, a corporate job. I had a great social life, a great job. I was doing, all the things that I thought I was meant to be doing. I was ticking off all the boxes. So yeah, that kind of stood out to me. But as I left the healing, I remember going to meet my parents afterwards, and just being around people. We went to get something to eat, and I noticed I could see like white around people and see people's auras, which I hadn't been able to see before. So I found that really interesting. Obviously, it opened up my third eye a little bit. And after that, I had loads of major changes in my life. Things reshifted and reorganized. And I went on to start studying Reiki myself, which just opened up so many things from there. I studied crystals, and then I was at a kind of fork in the road where I didn't know if I wanted to study shamanism or to work with the angels. And I was really drawn to both. And I kind of felt a pull to go, both directions. But it ended up that a course that I was thinking about for studying shamanism, which was taking place in the UK, I'd inquired about that. It was coming up, but it was actually really difficult for me to get to it. And at the same time, a course came up for angel healing, and it was just literally 20 minutes down the road. And it was really easy to go to this course. And that ended up being, I think, about probably 3 years or maybe more of studying with this mentor and guide and meeting like-minded people and working with the angels. And I used to always say it's like, when you go down the rabbit hole and you discover, different layers and new things. And there was always something new coming up that just blew my mind in so many different ways. So yeah, it opened up the world of angels. And I think from there, it's just kept evolving more and more and growing. And it's just been a beautiful journey. There's been challenges along the way, but yeah, it's been really, really gorgeous.
That sounds so amazing and beautiful, and really that you were guided into it. It was like not a coincidence that you ended up in that school instead of something else. And it's so beautiful to work with maybe for the listeners who are not really familiar with, I think everyone knows the concept of angels. Maybe there's some people that are new to it, and the way you work with it and what it is. Maybe you can explain that to just start with.
Yeah, so I think for most people, when we think about angels, we think about those, paintings of like cherub babies with wings, or angels that are depicted through art, or, in some other form with, huge big wings. And that's true. But for me, I see them as pure light. So when I started working with the angels, and what I found as well, for most people, it's easiest to sense their presence rather than actually see them. And what I find is that people believe that they can't work with angels, or they're not connected, or that you have to be psychic or a medium or have some special gifts or powers. And my experience has been that that's not true at all. And we all have our guardian angels, our own angelic team of light that work with us, and they're there to help us. And when we learn to tune in, when we learn to feel their presence, when we learn to know how they communicate with us, we can actually have a really deep relationship with them. It's like an extended family where we can work with our angels and guides each day. And when you think about it, I remember one time years ago going for a healing, and the healer said it was like my angels were shouting at me. Of course, they don't shout at you, but they were like trying to get my attention, and I wasn't listening. And for most of us, this is the case, that we do tend to pray or ask for guidance, or, sometimes we'll say to angels, angels, can you help me? But we don't necessarily listen for the answer. It's like having a one-sided conversation where you're constantly talking, but you don't take a break to let that answer come back. And when I work with people, the first thing that I'll usually ask is, well, when you ask your angels for a sign or for an answer or some guidance, how do you tune in? How do you listen? And a lot of people will look at me blankly. They'd be thinking, well, they should just give me an obvious sign that I know about. And we can ask for something obvious as well. But there's a process of beginning to trust that relationship, beginning to tune in, beginning to know they're there. And when you start off by gently tuning in, feeling them around you, and realizing, okay, the angels are there. I can feel a shift in energy. And I know that that's something because I didn't feel that a minute ago. And then you gradually work through developing that relationship, tuning into how they communicate with you, because for everybody, it's different. You have your own way of hearing and tuning in. Some people will be auditory, some people are more visual, some people it's like more clairsentient. So you really have to start to develop and to tune into how you personally communicate. And that relationship, then, as you nurture it, it begins to grow. You begin to find that you become more familiar with the angels and how they communicate with you. And you start to realize that you can ask a question and receive an answer or guidance, and that it will come. And maybe it's not going to be an immediate answer. Maybe it comes later that day, or it could come through some unexpected way. But knowing that it will come and trusting that is so important. So I think when we get over the barrier of, I can't do this, I'm not able to, or, a lot of people question, do I even have angels around me? When you get over those kind of fears and doubts, then you can start opening up in such beautiful ways. And I know that that's available to everyone to do.
Yes, I totally agree. And sometimes we just need some like guidance and insight to come to that realization, or someone that invites that in, of course, as well. As I went to a Reiki healer in Ireland that really invited them in. After that, it felt also more natural to commune with them. And it's interesting also how maybe you've gotten into this in your path, working with angels, how in history and mythology it's been depicted in many different ways. And how have you seen that? Have you got into like this mythology of the stories of the angels?
Yeah, it's funny because I find I'm very experiential. I like to experience it for myself. And I have poured through books about angels, about, all of the history. And I find that when I read about it, yes, I learn new things and I open up to new things that maybe I didn't know before. And I do refer to some of my angel books if I have something that I'm not too sure about. But for me, for the most part, I'll tune in directly and I'll get some information or some guidance. And then if there is a little bit of doubt or lingering, something that I'm thinking, is this really what I'm tuning into? Then I might go to a book to look it up. And well, more so at the start when I started doing it. And I used to love when I'd tune into an angel and I'd write out, information that was coming through. And I remember at one stage asking an angel what their name meant and writing it down and then going and looking it up afterwards and being so happy when I read the exact same thing about the meaning of their name. So I always find that that's a really powerful practice, to tune in first and then to go to the books afterwards and to confirm what you've tuned into. I find for me that that works quite well, and it is lovely to know that you can do it yourself. I'm all about empowering people to tune in themselves and to know that they can do it.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And it's in this world that we are in, and I mean, when we're doing spiritual work, I've seen that there's so many layers of different aspects and dimensions of things that we experience beyond the five senses. And in that way, sometimes it can, I on my journey, sometimes it can be hard to um, discover, or to, I think the word is discern, maybe, to what is what. Like, am I experiencing angel presence, or is it a spirit or a spirit guide? Or sometimes there's just a presence. Like, I can just give an example. Yesterday when I was almost falling asleep, like a really clear touch, like that happens quite often, like on this area of the head or face or maybe shoulder. And then it's like, okay, I know that someone is here or something is here, and it feels warm and nurturing. It's not that it's scary, or like you get a shock. It's like a nurturing. And sometimes we can hear something. So how has that been in your work too? Because I assume that you work with other layers of these dimensions, the astral plane and these dimensions. How has that been for you?
Yeah, I've had similar experiences. And I remember when I was, starting out, I was still in my corporate job. And I remember I used to sit at my desk and I'd be sending an email or doing some work, and I'd feel at the back of my head that kind of touch or that sensation, and wondering what it was. And then I remember for years, well, probably not years, but for a while, I went through a period of being in bed at night, and I'd noticed that I'd be kind of asleep. And even though it was silent, it's like the silence would become more silent, if that makes sense. And it would be like a deepening of the silence. And then from that, presence would approach my bed and literally wrap me in like a hug. And I never knew what it was, or who it was. And it's funny because now I've realized that, yes, often it can be angels or loved ones, and particularly when it feels so loving and so warm. But now I'm realizing that I today am tuning into myself from a few years back. And the work I'm doing now is influencing what's happened a few years back, if that makes sense. And I'm noticing that the timeline is just becoming a little bit blurred, where I'll have a flash of me. It could be some point in my journey, and I'll see very clearly that I was going through something or experiencing something. And from where I am now, knowing that everything is fine, I'm sending healing and love and light back to that version of me. So I often think, well, maybe that presence or that sensation in my head, yes, it can be angels and loved ones, but maybe it was myself coming back and just reassuring myself from where I am now. And I also find that my future self is influencing my present self. So it's just like this merging. And of course, in reality, there's no time, it's all one. But yeah, I find that it's just kind of like becoming more fluid and liquid. Have you experienced that?
Yeah, definitely. That's so, I mean, this is the theme of this week when we get into this mind, the acceleration of the consciousness that's happening right now. I especially in, like you said, this week has been so intense with shifting energies and full moon today. And um I contemplated this as well, because we both work with Reiki healing, and we go beyond time and space. So of course, in our own healing journey, we're trying to heal also our past. And then in that form, when I look back, yeah, maybe, when we also can visualize ourselves in a moment in the past, which was maybe not the easiest. Yeah, it could have been us that that were there, and giving that light. So that's where things start to blur, like you said, the timeline, and the also this aspect of being, like, we're talking about these beings as separate, but it's a manifested part of ourselves in one way, right? So it's like when we start, in yoga we have all these names, for example, like of the highest consciousness, but then we have the Ishvara, which is it's kind of like how we can perceive the divine, because it's so vast that we have to have these forms of, it can be deities or angels, because it's still an aspect of the same thing, which we are as well. We're not like a lower being and that we have to work with higher beings in that way. It's just that we're in a certain vibration and frequency, and we know that because when we sleep, so in yoga it's like really, okay, now we're in this stage. When we're awake, we're in the maya, the illusion of this life, and when we go to sleep, we are still in our senses when we're dreaming, because we're experiencing things with our physical senses. But where we connect on the deepest level is when we just come into that deep sleep, which is beyond time and space, because we have no connection to anything that is worldly anymore, any senses or any physical body. And that happened the other day when I was doing a meditation that was a guided visualization. So it shouldn't have been so that I fell asleep, but I did. And time went by. And when I woke up, I didn't even know where I was and how long I've been asleep. And it turned out to be much longer than I thought. And that's when we disconnect completely. So I really like that. And in those different stages, we can experience different things.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you said that, because that's something that I really am passionate about teaching, that the angels aren't above us. They're not at a higher level than us. They've a different frequency, but we're all equal. So I'm so glad you touched on that, because I think it's really important that people realize the angels are there to guide us, and other beings of light as well. And yes, they may have a different perspective. They may have, a higher viewpoint. They're looking at the bigger picture, but it doesn't mean that they're better than us. We're all equal. We're all part of the one source. But you were talking about that meditation, and I remember when I started doing my angel healing, and one of the teachers was saying that when we kind of tune out, it's like we're going to sleep, but we're actually going to different dimensions or different planes. And that's exactly, it sounds like what you were describing, that you went into that meditation, the guided meditation, and went to a different plane. And I often find, I don't know if you've worked with the Akashic records, but for me, anytime I tuned into the Akashic records, I would be able to last maybe about 5 or 10 minutes before just zoning out, because of the frequency. I wasn't able to maintain that frequency for too long, and my conscious mind wasn't able to be in that frequency, and I just tune out. But I find that working with clients and members, when we do guided meditations and work with the angels, people will often say to me, "Oh, I fell asleep. I wasn't even tired when we started, and I fell asleep." And I say to them, well, it's not necessarily asleep. It's just your conscious mind getting out of the way so that the work can be done. And sometimes our conscious minds do have to get out of the way and just allow the work to happen and to take place.
Yeah, exactly. Because also what you say, the conscious mind is bound in this limited think, like, okay, we have a higher consciousness, of course, but what you're talking to is the mind that can visualize and experience, and it's interesting when we go beyond that, beyond the emotions, and also beyond the energy, because the energy is also something that is manifested here. And like you say, when we let go of all those layers and release, it's like a small death and rebirth every time we go into that. And even if science tries to explain sleep, the question of why is never answered in a scientific way, because the answer is so beyond logical mind and the way we explain life and the body and the physiology, because there will always be a why, because in the end there is a higher consciousness and a higher like a creational force that is in place here. And I love what I want to tap into the Akashic Records work, because something that we just talked about, these documentaries that we've been watching, and the in one of those there's science that comes up, that we have something in our brain that makes us forget. It's something degenerative that is there, but it can't be explained why. And this can be the explanation why we're so, in one way, confused in this life. Like, why are we here? It doesn't mean that everyone contemplates on these questions. You have to reach that state of questioning to want to question. So it doesn't mean that it's for everyone's path here in this lifetime. But the remembrance, which we talked about, which sometimes gets activated, it's so strange. It's like getting like this shot of just like, oh wow, there's something, and it's not based in the heart or in the mind. It's more the heart. And as you're watching, when I was watching these, and I shared it on Instagram as well, it was more like a vibration in the body, which I felt like, first of all, ungrounded. Actually, I was very ungrounded after that. I felt like I was rising up, and it's just like a phase of like activating something within the body that has been latent. So I'm wondering, actually, I haven't personally done so much work in the Akashic Records, maybe like you have. Maybe you can share that, what it is and how you've worked with that.
Yeah, to be honest, I haven't done a huge amount. I was drawn to a book. I can't even remember the name of it. I read so many books. If it comes back to me, I'll let you know the name of it. But it was talking about the Akashic Records, and I began working with that energy. And so the Akashic Records are like, to me, I see it like a huge, vast library, which is universal. It keeps a record of every person's life, lifetimes, reincarnations, everything that you've done, everything that you've said, everything that you've taught. It's a little bit like the internet, where it's so vast and it just keeps a record of everything that's happening. I say within the universe, but probably within the multiverse as well. So we can tune into the library and the records of our lives, our existences, and we can go through to see if there are points where maybe there has been something that's happened that's affected us on a deep level, and we're holding onto the energy of a trauma or something that might have happened in this lifetime or another lifetime. And we can go back and we can rewrite some of the records to correct on an energetic level, trauma that we might be holding on to. So it works really well if we're playing out things, particularly on a family or an ancestral level, where you find that the same thing keeps playing out over and over. And it's just like this little frequency or energy or pocket of energy that needs to be ironed out, so to speak. And we can go into the Akashic Records and do that. And we can also find out information about the future and our purpose and where we're going. So there's so much we can tune into. So it can be really helpful from that perspective. But what I found when I was working with it, that it was so vast, and I was finding that I was, in there for a while, and I was able to do a little bit, and then I'd zone out. So I actually went back to working directly with the angels more so, because it was more sustainable for me.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And so sometimes certain practices work in that point of time. It's also going a little bit into different aspects of our being, because yeah, at certain points of time it's really important for us to work with our physical body, because it's also a vehicle here for everything else that we are. And then maybe we have to tap into like different parts of our energetic being. So it can be like working on the angel frequency, or working on the deep womb frequency that is going descending instead of ascending, and all of these different aspects. So I think it's really important to listen to that. And I feel like we're usually in our life, when we're meant to do something, we're supposed to do something, we're really guided there. We don't need to like force it, or it doesn't feel, it feels aligned. And
Totally.
yeah.
And just to, you touched on that, aspect of ascending or descending. And for me, I've always been great at, the upper levels and going up into the ethereal. And what I've had to work on is bringing my energy down, grounding my energy. And it's funny, actually, you talk about the womb, and it's just, I suppose I've known this on a few levels, but sometimes I find, we were talking about the menstrual cycle and the pain that we sometimes experience. For me, sometimes the pain can be grounding. It can bring me back into my body. So, and I don't think we should need that in order to be brought back in. But I know for me, sometimes that was needed in order to bring me down. And I know I went for a healing once where the woman who I was working with was just like, you are so ungrounded. You are just up in, the clouds. And she had to spend a few minutes at my feet at the end of the healing, just bringing me back down into my body. And now I'm so much better at it, and I can do it myself and stay grounded for the most part. But given the choice, I will just, go off into the etheric realms and quite happily spend my time there. But of course, we're in this physical reality for a reason, and we have to have balance. And I didn't understand that for a long time. I used to think, well, why do we have to be grounded? And then the analogy of the tree, when a tree has a huge canopy of like leaves, and up above it has this big canopy, but if it has no roots, the slightest wind is going to blow it over. So it needs those strong roots, that strong foundation to keep it in place and to allow the winds of life to blow through it without toppling it over. And for us, it's the same thing. When we're grounded, we can face the challenges of life. We can stay centered and balanced and grounded without the wind or the challenges toppling us over. So that's a really important aspect as well.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's so true. And both of these are important. It's like a balance, like you say. But it's also, I don't know if you've probably felt this since you were a child as well, that it's easy to disattach and to go into that state. I remember as a child, I could just come into a state where I think it's normal also for children, because we're not fully grounded yet, to just leave the body and have a like a perspective, and just wonder like, okay, why am I here? Why am I in this body? What are people saying right now? I don't understand anything. To come back, if we have that tendency still to be there. But as you said, when we're working with the womb, it is very grounding, and working with the earth and all of these practices. And
Yeah, it definitely has the importance of bringing that grounded energy in and being balanced. I love that saying, being in this world but not of it. We have to be in this world, we have to be grounded in this world. but also embracing our spirituality and the other side of us. And yeah, it's just the balance of the two.
So important. And how, so you do angel healings. How do you work with clients with that?
So for years, I had a healing room where I worked one-to-one, and clients would come to me, and I would do in-person healings. I also worked with doing remote healing where I would tune into the person's energy and I would direct the energy where it's needed. And I always find that so interesting because I would have people email me from around the world and say, can I, book in for a distance healing? And not really knowing anything about the person and being able to tune into their energy and tell them specific things that have come up. And for them to then confirm, yes, that's true. And I always found that so fascinating, because even though, as a healer, I would never have said that I was, psychic or anything like that. But I think the energy is energy. And whether a person is standing before you or whether they're over the other side of the world, there is no disconnect because we're all connected through this cosmic web of energy. So I always find that so interesting to be able to tune in on that level and have so much come through. Now, today, what I found was when I was working one-to-one, it was so satisfying being able to help people on that level. But I knew that I needed to reach more people. And what I do today is one of the things that I love is guided angel meditations. So I have a group that I work with where we meet online on Zoom and we tune into the angels and I guide them through angel meditations and attunements. And I find that really satisfying because with the group energy, it's like it's amplified. The healing and the connection is amplified because the whole group are working together. And it's like it just brings the energy up another level or another notch. And it's really beautiful to be able to have so many more people experience that at once, rather than doing one-to-one, because my time is limited. So it just means that I can reach and help more people that way.
That is so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And how can people find you and everything that you offer?
So angelicbodies.ie is my website. You can find me on Instagram, Sandra Rea, Angelic Bodies, and on Facebook, Sandra Rea. And they can tune in there.
Thank you so much. And do you have anything else you want to share before we close the call?
I think just for people to know that they have so much help available to them, that they have this team of angels who are there to work for them. And it's so profound, the help that's available to us that we're not necessarily using on a daily basis. And when we start tuning in and actually using that help that the angels are giving us and implementing it in our lives, it just allows things to open up on so many new levels. So my intention is that people will start tuning in and start receiving that help that the angels are offering.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sandra. It was so lovely to talk to you again. And I think this topic is so interesting. And I'm sure that we can talk another time about going deeper into other topics as well, because we have so much that we're working with and that you're sharing. So I'm so grateful that you are here today.
Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you for listening today, and I hope that the angels are very present in your consciousness right now and that they are providing you with everything that you need. I have been for a long time doing angel tarot card readings, so if this resonates with you, you can check my website out, how this works. They are very clear guided messages that come through these cards, and I've always trusted the guidance and the wisdom of the angels. And if you want to also check out Sandra's work, you have the links in the show notes to see what she offers in this realm. And it's so easy and so beautiful to connect with this energy, these energy beings that we call angels, archangels, and to understand them from our own heart, what they are and how to work with them, just knowing that they are always present when we need them. So I hope you enjoyed, and let's take a deep inhalation in through the nose and exhale out through the mouth. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.